Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the Unpredictable Pipeline. In this series, we are talking to marketing leaders across the B2B space about 2020. We all started this year with great expectations, and things have changed a little bit for a lot of us. So we're talking to leaders about how they have pivoted, what things they have done differently, and how they've helped lead their teams through this. And with us today is Allison Snow, the Vice President of Marketing at Definitive Healthcare. And Allison, thanks for joining us. I know we were both, before we started the live broadcast, just talking about and lamenting, virtual school, remote school, and how are things going in general for you right now?
Well, I'm sharing an office at the moment with a 10-year-old niece. Thrilled to have her,
Nice.
but just trying to reduce some chaos for my brother and sister-in-law, and love having her, and I've got the space, so that's really cool. But I know other folks have it a lot more chaotic than I do, so I've got a lot of empathy here for the start of the school year in this environment.
Yeah, I think that just in general, there really isn't, there's no grading. We're not keeping score. I think everyone, whether you have kids or whether you have elderly parents, or no matter what you're dealing with, just trying to get yourself through this. This is a different time, and so we're all doing the best that we can in our personal lives as well as in our work lives. So appreciate you taking care of your niece. That's pretty awesome.
It's exciting for me.
If she wants to do a shout out at some point in the video, I'm totally fine with that.
I don't know if I'll be able to help it if she does. So
that's a good point. Well, maybe just kind of introduce yourself, your role at Definitive Healthcare, and then what did kind of end of Q1 look like for you guys?
Sure. So end of Q1.
Yeah, I mean, I think we started the year January, February, somewhat normal, and then all of a sudden mid-March, things started.
That's about how it went. Absolutely. So Allison Snow, again, Vice President of Demand Gen and Customer Marketing at Definitive Healthcare. I've been in sales and marketing and sales enablement for about 15 years, outside of taking 4 years away from a practitioner role right before this job to do some analyst and consulting work with Forrester. While I was there, I spent 2 years on the B2B marketing team and 2 years on the customer insights practice. And in both teams, just worked to help B2B teams use data, analytics, and tech to just power their revenue teams and revenue platforms. So arrived here at Definitive in Q4 of 2019, just one quarter before the quarter that we're going to talk about, and almost a year ago, and again, lead various components of demand gen and customer marketing. So I often tell the story, Matt, that we were off to a conference called HIMSS, which anyone in healthcare will probably recognize. And we just had our bags packed. We were truly in the last travel meeting, so everyone on the travel team was sort of hearing me give some final, bits of advice. Here's what we're going to do at the booth. Here's this list of sort of final see you at the airport, when someone just held up their phone and said, "Actually, Allison, we can stop talking about this. They just canceled." And it was after a few months of planning. So everyone in the room was pretty sad. And I imagine, so were the people that we were going to have conversations with in terms of putting our product in front of them and kind of selling and marketing and doing our thing. It's a big IT conference, so lots of folks are there to kind of do the same thing. So we immediately kind of said, we kind of started this journey with a little bit of empathy. We just felt like everyone that we sell to had a very similar experience that very day, right? And so we just kind of started this journey by thinking, how do we shore up here and be the best strategic partner that we could be? So I think we ended Q1 half stunned, half thinking we were home for a few weeks, half thinking we'd have to deal with school and work from home and figuring out all of those schedules for a few weeks. And just really wanted to talk to as many of our clients as we could, express both concern and reassurance. And I think we ended a little bit stunned and a little bit, what does Q2 look like now? What do we have to revise? What are our best opportunities for revenue in the short term? But also, how do we continue doing the things we always do, like build early brand preference for folks who aren't ready to buy, upsell, cross-sell, how do we take care of renewals? So end of March was very much a what do we do and what does the playbook say about this, right? Which was obviously nothing.
Well, it feels like March was, 6 years ago, but I do remember, in the middle of March, I think we all thought, well, this will be a couple weeks. So I distinctly remember my gym saying, well, we're going to be open again on April 1st. And I distinctly remember someone saying that they weren't going to play baseball until the All-Star break. And I said, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to be shut down that long. And so I agree with you. We all thought, well, this will be a couple weeks of distraction, then we'll kind of get back to normal. Here we are doing this conversation at the end of September, and it's almost Q4, and we're still, most of us are working from home still, and so this disruption has become the new normal, right? But we're still selling, we're still operating. So having lost HIMSS, which is a huge conference, I know, for you guys, and then probably having lost other field marketing and other events, throughout that that time period over since then, what have you had to pivot to? What are some of the changes you've had to make to continue to drive pipeline for the organization?
Yeah, I think what I'd talk about is the opportunity that we found. So again, I think a lot of people will describe this as going back to the fundamentals, and there's some truth in that. But I think specifically, we did kind of go back to, we faced a couple of things head on. We kind of said, okay, we're hearing from folks that were mid-deal or on the cusp of contract sign, that they've got increased scrutiny from their CFOs and financial offices. They are working harder to internally champion this thing. So we've got to take a new approach to just essentially help those buyers buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of confidence that our product will help these companies sell. Mm-hmm. So, we really kind of had to say, well, we can't let them translate this. We just kind of have to be in a position to say, not only, your peers and competitors use us, or, you have to buy us now because this is your time to use data and analytics to sell. What I'm trying to say is we basically double down on use cases and other customer viewpoints. So to really say, look, you don't have time right now. Keep in mind, Matt, I may not have made this explicit, but our companies, we're a healthcare data and analytics firm. So a lot of the companies that use our data are selling to providers. And a particularly tough time for providers, needless to say. They're, not just the frontline staff of physicians and nurses, but the entire building is just busy and chaotic, and has been since March for a lot of those folks. So we've got folks in pharma who used our data a whole lot, but also did a ton of in-person selling. That's just kind of the model there. And we just kind of said, how do we help people tell the same stories that they've been selling with a more aggressive undercurrent of value and ROI and immediacy and urgency? We are now competitive with everything else that wants budget, right? It's not like we're going against competitor A or competitor B. We're simply up against spend this money or save it, which is a whole different competitive environment. So I think we found opportunity to go back to folks who, where you don't necessarily spend all the time in the world when you're building campaigns for specific audiences, but those folks that show almost no sign of intent and no sign of being in market, and focus on building some early brand preference with helpfulness and service and commentary and perspective that's helpful, and just building trust really deep in the pipeline. I think we did the same with clients. We really kind of pivoted to say, how do we make sure that clients who are already existing clients who are in our product get the most out of that, most value out of that investment? So being a data analytics firm, there are, our use cases go from really, really basic to very sophisticated. And the more we could help people move along that spectrum to more sophisticated, the better off they were in their own businesses, and the more strategic partner we were. Much like going down the funnel, we also took the opportunity to say, how do we create a vision of a deeper commercial relationship with us? So while it might not mean request to sign on the dotted line today, it looks like let's be really explicit again about what the deeper relationship looks like, about what is the next logical product pairing for you, etc. I think that just the biggest example there of kind of being a strategic partner, it's just something that I think will resonate with everyone in healthcare or not, but telehealth, for instance, is exploding.
Yeah, I think that, Elena here says, trust is so crucial, right? And I think it really is. And I think this is a time when you can, as a brand, really build some trust and credibility, really invest in those relationships. I mean, any time you're selling, there's people that aren't ready to buy. And then there's plenty of people now that may actually want to buy, they just, you can't control if your CFO says no new investments for now,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think a lot of companies, ours included, kind of say, hey, listen, let's just tamper down on cash burn for a little bit.
Mhm.
And that is somewhat of an artificial barrier to the sale, because you've got an organization that in many cases still needs the investment, still needs to buy. So how do you balance, and how do you in your marketing, as well as in the direction you give to the sales organization, how do you balance that trust and empathy building, and that, that credibility building, with also having some level of compassionate urgency to really sort of help your customers see a path towards sort of greater success moving forward, even if it means sort of giving up some of that cash?
Yeah, I think in some ways it meant giving a lot of knowledge away, which I think was a habit of ours in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But to really look at those opportunities and say, okay, let's really kind of dig into the urgency here. Clearly, some trends are more complicated than others. So I started to talk a little bit about telehealth, and I'll just jump there. Depending on the period of measure, telehealth claims have increased by about 9,500%. This makes sense for all of us, right? You've probably been in a virtual call. If you haven't, it's slightly unusual. I have said to myself, and even, saw some tweets like, just saw my doctor for 9 minutes. That's a big change. This would have been a 2-hour investment of my time any other day.
Right.
So, we can argue whether it's consumer driven, because a lot of people say it isn't. It's COVID driven, right? The
Mm-hmm.
old, you ever see that meme that says, hey, who led digital transformation at your company? You can pick CEO or CFO or COVID. It's like
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
COVID led this. So, but we really kind of said, okay, we have all the claims data to kind of help people understand not only that telehealth exploded, which is an interesting piece of information, but also what were the regions that adopted it really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
because that matters for folks who are selling to providers, and what are the specialties that got the most use out of it? Where did it kind of peak? Where did it taper off? What does it mean if it's mostly PCP visits versus something in the category of psychology?
Mm-hmm.
But it means very different things. And if you're planning your go-to-market as a medical device company or a tech company or a pharma company, these things are really, really important. The legislation around whether prescriptions can be written, prescriptions can be prescribed, or for lack of a better word, virtually, is really important to a lot of the folks that we serve. So I think we've really tried to find opportunities to easily educate people. So for another example, we moved from 40-minute, 50-minute webinars to 15-minute webinars where, it's like, let's just make this easy for you guys. This is going to be so substantial that you might have to rewind it once you finish it. And you might have to, just watch it again and stop on the graphs you care about, but that's okay. We're just going to take 15 minutes from your day. Join us, and one of our, our data professionals is just going to go into the claims data, consume it live, make some predictions live, make some bold calls live, and just sort of show you how to work with this thing. So one, it does build the appetite for a product that we have and create demand, sustain demand, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is a way to have empathy and say, look, this stuff is important. We've got it. We want to share what we can with you, even outside of a commercial relationship.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that's really good. And you mentioned earlier sort of the COVID is really driving the digital transformation, and that's kind of what exponential change is all about, right? I mean, things happen a little slowly until they happen suddenly,
Yeah.
and oftentimes it isn't sort of someone inside the organization sort of having the courage to do it. It's an outside force that forces you to do it. But then once you're forced to do it, you realize, wow, this actually is better. Wow, this actually is more efficient for us, and everyone else sees that as well, and it becomes more quickly the new norm. As you
Absolutely.
think about 2021, so you're slowly coming up on 1 year on the job here, not the year you thought it was going to be, but as you think about 2021, what are some of the tenets of your marketing strategy that are now part of your new normal that you think are going to be things that are sort of guideposts and tenets of that program in the new year?
Yeah, I think we've done a couple of things that are really good. Good lessons learned. We'll probably be more open about remote work. I won't spend too much time there. Everyone gets that. Talk about things that worked better than you expected. I think we found just across the board, everyone kind of said, okay, this productivity has skyrocketed. It's not at all what most people expected. But I think we've also had harder conversations. So a lot has happened internally. We've got as many folks who are working parents who are thinking about balancing childcare and remote school with what they're doing, I think we've responded in a really responsible and reasonable way to say, yeah, that makes sense. We see it. We live in this world. I'm looking out, this is true. This is true for our customers and true for employees. So when that happens, you have to be just ruthlessly have a sense of ruthless priority, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, to just kind of evaluate everything and say, is this our easiest, not easiest, is this our most promising opportunity for revenue growth in this time frame? And maybe there's other factors as well, but that's certainly a key one. And say, this is what we can accomplish. Be ruthlessly honest about timelines and expectations and what we can achieve, and sort of acknowledge what hurts, right? So you may hear in response to that sometimes, well, we need the leads for Q4, and we certainly do, right? That's part of what we're doing here is giving you leads so that you can think about your quota and achieve what the company wants to achieve in this timeline, which we're still doing and still committed to. But there's acknowledging the issue there and kind of saying, yes, this is not perfect, right? We are in a bit of an imperfect world, and we're working with what we have, and we're making choices and hopefully the right choices that are right for the organization. We don't do it in a vacuum, but there are certainly priorities, and we'll do, we don't want to do anything kind of halfway, but we want everyone to be fully briefed on expectations and just outrageously transparent as far as what we're doing and the timelines in which we're doing them. So I think that's a good habit. I would keep that. And go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think those all sound great. I think, and look, I mean, we're all going to be, there's no precedent for what we're facing from a planning standpoint. It's going to be difficult to find benchmarks, historically that help us figure out what that looks like. And I think, like a lot of companies try to think, okay, what's my long-term goal and what's my short-term path to get there? I think to a certain extent, we're sort of forced to look, at shorter paths forward and say, listen, what am I going to do over the next 60, 90 days?
Yeah.
And what am I going to learn from that becomes part of that new normal moving forward? And how do I use that, at least temporarily, to make sure that I'm working within the guardrails of what works and what doesn't? And we're all, to use a racing analogy, like we were in a straightaway for a long time and just going as fast as possible. We're still very much in the curve. You gotta go slower. You got to make sure you don't hit the walls. You got to constantly be looking at your instruments. At some point in the future, we're going to get back to a straightaway. And races are won at the end of the curve when the race car drivers know when to start accelerating again. I don't know that we're there yet, but I think that's one of the reasons why I think smart marketing leaders are going to emerge out of this with a lot of great success stories by figuring out not only how to do this well now, but how to succeed moving forward. And that's going to be a particular challenge coming out of 2020, planning for 2021.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the first questions you asked me a few minutes ago was, how did you pivot? And if we need to pivot, if we know that, if we need to plan to pivot, right? We need to plan, but also know that we might need to pivot and sort of become increasingly agile. I think we have to ask ourselves questions like, is there an annual plan? An annual growth plan, of course, an annual revenue plan, of course, some general idea of where you want to be at the end of the year. But maybe we're better off putting effort into the here and now, knowing what the highest priority is. And believe me, I'm not an anti-planner. That's not my profile at all. So this is me kind of talking to myself saying, maybe it's okay if we took our foot off sort of the planning pedal and accelerated on the execution here and now pedal, because things will change.
Yeah, no, they will. Well, Allison, I appreciate your time doing this. A lot of good insights. I know you're super busy, but appreciate your insights and your candor. And thank you for being part of this Unpredictable Pipeline series.
Love it. Thanks so much, Matt.
Take care, guys.